Hi, welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Jakey. It is Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, and the anxiety has been strong all week. I feel like somebody's been sitting on my chest, and nothing I do has worked. Lots of meditation, breathing exercises, hiking. I am in Macomb, in the house where I used to live when I first moved to Idaho, and I'm all moved out of Yellow Pine, out of Candy and Willie's place, that nice house I was staying in all winter, and packing up. Once I started packing up that house, the anxiety started setting in, because I don't know what's next, and I really don't know what's next because I found out last week that the tavern that I worked at last year, Yellow Pine Tavern, is being sold, and I don't know if I'm going to go back to work there this summer. I don't know what I'm going to do. And to compound that, my car is shitting the bed. I drove it out of Yellow Pine, and I had a little mishap. There were ruts in the road, and my tires were on the road, like on actual pavement. Um, as I've said before, to get out of Yellow Pine to civilization, you take a 15-mile dirt road to a 33-mile single-lane paved road to a 26-mile double-lane paved road, and then you're finally in civilization in a town called Cascade, which civilization is a loose term. When it comes to Cascade, it's got a little shitty supermarket and a dollar store and a hardware store and a couple of gas stations and not a whole lot else. But on that 33-mile single lane road, the snow in the center of the road, there were tracks that my wheels fit in, that my tires fit in, and in the center of the road was a high level of snow in sections. And I saw this one section where the snow was probably about a foot high, and keeping in mind I just have a car I don't have a truck or a SUV with high clearance, and so the low end of my car, the bottom of my car, sort of hit that snow. And I didn't think much of it at the time, and I brought my car in for an oil change, which it was due for, and they called me the next day, and they were like, and I told them, hey, take a look at what other problems there might be, and they're like, looks like you hit something, and there's a hole in your radiator. I already had a small leak, and now it's a large leak, and it's sort of drooling coolant fluid from the radiator. And I was feeling pretty good when I got to McCall, and then when I got that news about my car on Friday, it sort of set me back into another little tailspin. And it's almost $1,200 for that repair, plus the power steering pump needs to be replaced, which I replaced a year ago. I've already replaced the alternator. And $1,200 is just too much to pay, considering one of the windows doesn't go up or down and is duct tape shut now, and the motor on another window is about to fail. The window goes up and down very slowly to the point where I don't even use it anymore. So I started thinking, well, what am I going to do? Like, what the fuck is going on? And I decided to sell the car, and I was trying to find a way to sell it because there's no used car places here in McCall, and I'm afraid to drive it to Boise because I don't want to break down in the middle of a canyon with no cell service and not be able to call a tow truck. So I was trying to find someone to get rid of it. I looked up Cars for Kids, that charity with the fancy jingle. 1877 Cars for Kids. 1877 Cars for Kids, right? So they were willing to come pick it up for free and take it and give me some sort of tax deduction. Then I Googled, are they a good charity? And they don't have good ratings. So I thought about just sending it to, like, having a junk removal service come get it, only because I don't have much time. I don't have the time to sell it. And then I thought, hey, let me give Dan a call. Dan's the old dude who owns the farm that I worked on up in McCall. And I was like, Dan, I got a proposition for you. You want to try to sell this thing for me and leave it on your property for a while, and I'll split the proceeds with you. And Dan and Patsy, I don't think they have a lot of money. They don't seem to. They're not destitute, but I was like, hey, if I can help Dan out here, and give him some money for helping me get rid of this problem. That'd be awesome. And I started thinking, well, that car got me through 18 months. It got me through 2 winters. When I bought it for $3,100, I kind of assumed or hoped it would just get me through 1 winter. That's all the time I planned on spending out here. And it got me through 2 winters. And I would love to say it served me faithfully, but it did get me stuck twice. The alternator died in said canyon on the way to Boise in November of 2020. And I had to hitchhike into Boise at the height of the pandemic. And that was a whole mess. And then when the power steering pump blew, it tore the serpentine belt, and that got me stuck for another 5 days in Grangeville. And I'm not going to let it get me stuck again, right? Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times. So I just want to unload this thing, and I just figure if I spend another winter in Idaho or a place like this, I'll probably need to get a new vehicle that's more suitable for backcountry conditions. And otherwise, I'm not a fan of cars in general, and I hope to not have to have one. But I don't know where I'm going to live, and I don't know if I'm going to need a car, but what I know I'm not going to need is a money pit. So I'm getting rid of it, and I'm going to take the bus to Boise today and work at the Tree Fort Festival doing artist check-in all week, meaning I'll be sitting in a room in the Oahe building in downtown Boise, and all the artists playing the festival will have to come see me and check in, and I'll give them a big smile and make them feel good about being at the festival. I think that's something I'm very qualified for. So I'm stoked on that, and I got to have 6 nights in a hotel. It's a nicer hotel than I'm used to spending my time in, the Red Lion downtown in Boise, just a block away from my preferred accommodations in that town, the Cabana Inn, also known as the Murder Motel, because many murders happen there, and they find dead bodies there on a regular basis. If anyone's looking for an investment opportunity, I would highly suggest buying the Cabana and refurbishing it. Right now, it seems to be just an Indian family runs it, and it's mostly a transient mid to long-term stay motel. And whenever I've stayed there, I've only stayed in 6 different rooms. There's 6 rooms in a line, and I've always stayed in one of those. So I assume the rest are just saved for people who are there on a weekly or monthly or longer basis. But the Red Lion is nice, and I did stay there once. It's the first hotel I ever stayed in Boise with Greg and Shanti. They put me up there when I did a roadie gig for their kids' music project, Playdate. So I guess it'll be nice to go back there. They do have a pool. The weather is not suitable for a pool, but when you're a polar bear like me, it really doesn't matter what the weather's like when it comes to swimming. I think they have a hot tub too, so I packed my American flag Speedo, and we'll see what the week brings me. I have a feeling when I get out of here, when I leave McCall, I'm going to feel a lot lighter. And then I'm going to New York for a month. And then I honestly don't know what's next. I put all my stuff up in the attic at the tavern, in that room where I slept in every now and then last year when the weather was really bad. I spent most of the summer camping in Yellow Pine, but there were a few times when it was really cold and rainy that I stayed upstairs in the tavern. So that's where my stuff is. Half of my worldly belongings. The other half is in Michael Murphy's garage in Ramsey, New Jersey. Because also last week, while I was packing up my house in Yellow Pine, Michael was packing up my storage space where I put all my stuff when I moved out of New York. Because the building the storage is in got sold and it's being demolished. And they sent me a certified letter to New York, which my friend Harrison, who's collecting my mail, said, "Hey, do you want me to open this for you?" I was like, no, I probably just owe them some money. So I called them a few days later, and they were like, "Hey, you have to get your shit out of here by March 18th. So I panicked, of course. Not panicked too bad, but I called my friend Michael, and he went and got the stuff. So when I get back to New York, I'm going to have to go out to New Jersey and comb through my belongings and get rid of a lot of them. Maybe I'll have a yard sale. Wouldn't that be something? But probably more likely what I'm going to do is just take it all to Goodwill and try to compact my belongings. And then I'm going to come back to Idaho on April 26th. And by then, hopefully I'll have figured out some sort of plan of what I'm going to do. Part of me is leaning towards staying in New York for the summer. Part of me is leaning towards just riding my bike all summer. I thought about coming back and staying in McCall for the summer, but to me that feels like going backwards. I could live here permanently in this house, but I don't know that this is the place where I want to try to make a life for myself. And I think that my life will be nomadic for the foreseeable future and just kind of move around and keep letting the universe dictate where I'm going to go and what I'm going to get up to. And yeah, it's the unknowing that's got me a little bit. And I've noticed that, like, since I've been in Idaho, I've had very few bouts with panic and anxiety, a little bit with depression. But it really hit me when I was coming to New York last October for the first time in 16 months. I was very nervous because I didn't know how that was going to feel. And it ended up feeling fine, but it wasn't a place I wanted to stay in. So I'm going to go there for another month and see how that feels. And in the middle of that, I'm going to take off to Detroit and see 2 Jack White shows, a Flaming Lips show, probably, and Monday Night Raw. I say probably because I have a ticket to Jack White in Grand Rapids. But the only way to get there is going to be to rent a car on Saturday because rental agencies are closed on Sunday. I have to pay for 2 days of a rental car, which would be $174 to go see Jack White in Grand Rapids, where I already spent $125 on a ticket. The other option is to just stay in Detroit and see the Flaming Lips for free. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I love the Flaming Lips, but I also love Jack White, and I'm probably going to go. I would assume I'm going to bite the bullet and spend the $174 on a rental car. And I've also never been to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I always wanted to. I've always wanted to go to pretty much every city in America. So I assume that's what I'm going to do, but who knows? I kind of don't know anything at this moment. And as I'm sitting here recording this podcast, I'm still feeling a little tightness in my chest. Because I'm like organizing the few belongings I had, which losing the car has been a whole nother kerfuffle, which is maybe the word of the week. Because I had brought more stuff out of Yellow Pine with me than I can sort of carry. But I was like, hey, no problem. This stuff can just sit in my car. And I had a place to stash my car in Boise, and now I don't have that. So I'm going to leave the stuff I need for my motorcycle here in McCall. And brought some stuff already that I had brought with me. Everything I brought with me in the car were things I really needed. But I managed to take a huge box and fill it with stuff I don't really need. Because we don't really need much, and that's obviously something I've learned over the past couple of years, and I've talked about before the differences between wants and needs. And right now, I kind of want a place to call my own, but that is not going to be on the immediate horizon. Why? Because I don't have, partly because I don't have money, but I could go move somewhere and settle. And that's a funny word to use, right? Because I could settle in one place, in one location, but I don't know that I would be happy doing that. And I think I talked about that last week, that as soon as I start to feel settled, I also start to feel that itch to keep on moving, you know? Jack Kerouac and I come from the same place, Lowell, Massachusetts, and they're doing a centennial celebration of him soon. It just reminds me of, on the road and being a drifter and a vagabond. And I'm not opposed to that, of course, but right now it feels a little weird. But I'm happy to be going to Boise to work on this festival and sort of like get back into the swing of music work. And I've started to book some shows, though that doesn't make me feel good either because it's risk. The whole act of being a promoter is gambling, and gambling is not something I'm into doing right now. And I was really looking forward to another summer in Yellow Pine and sort of like knowing the lay of the land this time and knowing the people that I run into and how to talk to the tourists that come in and how to extract money from them in the form of tips, which I got very good at last year. So part of me was really looking forward to doing that again. Another part of me was like, about a month into it, I might be like, what am I doing? Like, it's just a repeat of what I did last year. So I guess I'm just going to let the universe kind of send me signs. And I feel like that car braking was sign number one that maybe my time in this part of the country is done. But never say never. So I just don't know what's happening. But I did try to make the most of my time here in McCall. When I was here a couple of weeks ago for the Steve Poltz show, I kind of like realized, there were 4 different people at the show that I was like, quote unquote, friends with, that I started to develop a friendship with before I left McCall. And running into those people made me feel like, oh, I do have a little bit of a community here. But I also realized that my biggest community in any one place is New York City. Which has me sort of leaning towards spending the summer there, though I can't say for sure how I'm going to feel after a month of being there. Though being there in the spring, when everything's starting to come alive, is probably going to be a very different feeling than being there in the fall when everything is dying. So, we'll just see. But I do know I booked a flight to come back to Idaho to get my motorcycle, and the original plan was to just ride my motorcycle for most of May, and I was going to head south down to Zion in southern Utah and just sort of sit in the sun for a while, because I think after a really long backcountry winter, I need sunshine on my body, as much of my body as I can. Talking shorts and tank top, yo. Thankfully, where I'll be staying in Cobble Hill is right near Brooklyn Bridge Park, so I'll have a nice place to go run every day. And so long as the weather's nice, I think it's going to feel incredible. But April 26th, I will be coming back to Idaho to get my bike. And when I got the call about my car, I told the woman, yeah, go ahead and make the repair. And then I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. So I called Mike Gosselier, the Goose from Gosselier Power Sports, one of the most storied motorcycle mechanics in the history of motorcycles. This guy, I've talked about him before. When I broke down in Grangeville in my car, I happened to break down in the parking lot of his motorcycle shop, and my friend Keith Dowdle, who I bought this bike from, had told me, if you're ever in Grangeville, go see my friend Mike. He's got a little motorcycle shop there. What he did not tell me before I got there was that Mike was the longtime head mechanic for Ricky Carmichael, widely considered one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time, dirt bike motorcycle racer, motocross and supercross. Jeremy McGrath has more wins, Bubba Stewart has more wins, but Ricky Carmichael sort of did it in a way for a long stretch of time. Bubba Stewart was like a comet. He burned bright and fast. Jeremy McGrath had a long career. Ricky Carmichael had a long career, but Ricky Carmichael is credited sort of for changing the way people rode supercross and motocross. But anyway, my bike is in the capable hands of the Goose, so I called him, and I was like, hey, man, I had left my bike with him for the winter, and I told him, pretend I'm going to ride this thing to Peru and back and go over it with a fine-tooth comb. It's got 113,000 miles on it now. I bought it with 80,000 miles, and hadn't had to do any major repairs. I did have to do one major repair. The whole back braking system got fucked up when I was in Moab last year because I didn't secure one of my tie-down straps that was holding my camping gear on the bike, and the strap got caught in the brake mechanism. Then I ended up riding like almost 700 miles back to Grangeville, to Idaho from Moab with no rear brake, which, if you know motorcycles and bicycles, the front brake gives you more of your stopping power, but it was a little unsettling. But that cost $700 to fix, which I already paid for. And I called him and I said, hey, what kind of shape is my bike in? And he's like, I tore it all apart. I did the valve adjustments, looked at everything, replaced some hoses and seals and frazzle-dazzles and flim-flams and jibby-jabbies and whatever they call those things that go on motorcycles. And he said, it's going to be another $600, and your bike, you're going to get a whole lot more life out of this bike, probably. So then I called the the car mechanic back, and I say, fuck this thing. Like, don't put another nickel into it. So at least I know I have one vehicle, and the one I enjoy the most. I did mention last week, like, motorcycles, they're my thing. Not because I wanted them to be, it's just the way they make me feel when I'm on them. Like, jet skis, snowmobiles, cars, motorcycles, yeah, baby, that's what I like. So I got that thing, and I'm going to come back and get it, and I'm still going to ride down to Zion. Plans to meet an old friend from high school, oddly enough, who I sort of been reconnecting with during the pandemic. And it's her 50th birthday. Or is it 49th? 49, whatever, it's her birthday. And she's always wanted to go to Zion, so I told her I'd meet her there. And I've been there a few times, so I was like, hey, I'll show you around. Timing works out. And she is a wonderful woman who could use some adventure. So I'm happy to help supply that, or assist in that. So yeah, I'm going to head down to Zion beginning of May. And then the world is my oyster, so to speak. So as nerve-wracking as it kind of is now, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just, like I said, look for signs from the universe. And I do have a very strong feeling that whatever panic and anxiety I'm feeling now won't last much longer. And as I told my therapist yesterday, as rough as the past week and a half have been, and a lot of the winter sort of was, like, I did it, and I didn't break down, and I didn't totally freak out, and I was able to, all that work you do on yourself is great on a day-to-day basis, but until you're really challenged, you don't know how effective that work was. And in the past, I think challenges like this would have totally flipped me out. And as flipped out as I've gotten, I haven't done anything drastic, and I've been able to tell myself and reassure myself that everything's going to be okay. Like Harvey Keitel says to Steve Buscemi after he's been shot in Reservoir Dogs and is the back of the car. Say the goddamn fucking words. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. That's what I was telling myself last week, and I actually pulled that scene up on YouTube to watch it. Because I was like, you're going to be okay. So if nothing else, I've learned that all this work I've done and the tools I've sort of put into my toolbox, I can pull them out, and they may not have worked to the extent of, like, healing my anxiety for the past week and a half. I'm here, right? I'm recording a podcast. I haven't partaken in any self-destructive behavior. Didn't start drinking, so hey, at least I got that going for me. But also, like, what's that old from Police Squad, right? Must have picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue. Except I wasn't sniffing glue. I was just overwhelmed by the uncertainties of life, and also just all the other uncertainty, right? Like, is nuclear war going to happen tomorrow? Is the government going to actually look after us? Is this coming economic downturn going to allow the billionaires of this country to just scoop up more assets at a distressed price and concentrate more wealth in this country? That's probably concentrate more wealth into less hands in this country, that's something I'm fearful of. Just for everybody, not even necessarily for myself, like what I learned by being in Yellow Pine and even in McCall is that, like, when the chips are down, I'll figure something out. Like, as long as I don't mind hard work, then I'll persevere, right? And I'll come up with an angle and a hustle and figure out a way to make a livable wage, which is not something most people have, and some states' minimum wage is up to $15, but the national minimum wage is $7.50, and that's just despicable. And I saw an interesting thing on Twitter yesterday that said every time Congress raises their own pay, it should be tied to a raise in the minimum wage. And, I mean, that just seems like a brilliant idea, right? Because if our Congress people can give themselves a raise, why can't everybody get a raise, right? If they need more money to exist, why doesn't everybody else, especially the most vulnerable of us and the people who don't have other options? And I've talked about this a little bit up in Yellow Pine with some of the people, and they're like, well, it's that person's fault for not being able to get a better job. And it's like, it's not anybody's fault for not, being able to see angles and, sort of act on them and capitalize on them and figure out a way to make more money. Like, it's sort of a society's obligation to provide jobs for people that can really keep the economy humming, right? Because does it keep the economy humming if a big corporate entity is buying up single-family homes to then put them on the rental market and then pricing out a lot of people from buying homes? No, that's not a good indicator of how a society looks after its people. And that makes me sad. That's the thing that makes me saddest about this country right now, is that, like, maybe you're not, smart isn't even the right word, but, maybe you're not enterprising enough to start your own business or come up with a side hustle. But does that mean you should have to live under the poverty level? No. And the poverty level, the bar for that is set so low so that people who make over it, the government can say, well, they're not living in poverty. But if you can't afford the median one-bedroom apartment in the city where you live from a minimum wage job, like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not an indicator of a good society. And, like, yeah, should you be able to drive a Lamborghini on a minimum wage job? Fuck no. But should you be able to pay for an apartment and be able to save enough so that after 10 years of the workforce you can afford a down payment on a house? No. And wouldn't that be good for the economy if more people own their own homes? Well, absolutely. But when you hear politicians and pundits talk about the economy, oftentimes what they're talking about is the stock price, stock market. And, like, very few people, I don't have the figures in front of me. That's not what I do. But, like, you can Google it. It's a small percentage of people in this country that actually own stocks. So who gives a fuck how the stock market is doing, right? Like, to me, the best indicator of how a society is looking after its people is how the people on the lowest rungs of employment, the lowest financial rungs of employment, can look after themselves. I would love to be able to get a $15 an hour job working at the base of a ski mountain and just be able to live a halfway decent life. But that's not in the cards for me or for so many Americans. But I digress. And my issue is different from that. My issue is just trying to figure out where I want to be and what I want to do, and how I want to exist. We're all human beings, but we all should be humans being, right? Like, we should be able to work one job for 40 hours a week, or dare I say less, because 40 hours is a lot. That's a lot of your time to give up. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's a third of your day if you don't add commuting, and then you have to factor in sleeping, and then you have to factor in just the errands that you have to run to stay alive, and, like, how much time do you actually have to be, right? And then by the time you get to Saturday, you blow off some steam, and then Sunday, for most people, even myself included, when I'm self-employed, Sundays are still a day where I'm like, fuck, there's another week coming, and I have to figure out something to do to make myself feel like I have some meaning and also figure out how to make some money every week. And obviously, I choose not to have straight jobs. I could probably get a straight job. But even then, I think, do I want someone telling me where I have to be? 8 hours a day or more? Nah, not really. But anyway, on the plus side, so getting back to finding out that I had some community in McCall, I had dinner with a friend in town on Wednesday, and then I went skiing on Thursday. I put that season pass I bought at the end of last season to use at least one time, and that was cool. But skiing is not really my bag, baby. Like, I like it and I enjoy it fine. But when you're skiing alone, there's no one really to talk to on the chairlift, and that gets boring. And, I don't know. I don't think winters are for me. So I don't see myself spending another winter up here in Idaho or in any cold weather place. So where am I going to go? I don't know. Might go to Mexico. Might go to Southeast Asia. Might go to Brazil. Might go to California. Might go down to the Florida Keys. If I stay in the United States next winter, it's going to be somewhere where I can ride my motorcycle pretty much every day. And that means a place that doesn't freeze. Because I don't mind riding when it gets cold out. I was looking at, temperatures in Arizona. And yeah, it gets cold and it gets down into the 40s and sometimes even the 30s at night. But I don't mind riding my motorcycle in that. And also, I don't really need to go places. So if it's shitty weather out, I have no problem staying still. Or if I'm like, oh, I really wanted to go do that thing tonight, well, then I'll get a lift from somebody. Or I just won't do it. And that's fine. And the writing situation was really challenging this winter. And I think it actually, I thought it was going to be nice to sit and write. But what a lot of those writing days did was force me, in trying to write my memoir, so to speak, was forcing me to confront a lot of truths about myself and the choices I've made and places I've ended up that were, quite frankly, very uncomfortable. And it was a lot of self-examination without any human contact. Certainly no human contact with people who I know and love, who know and love me. So that became really challenging as well. Just being out alone in that house. And I've sort of shifted gears and this week started writing about my time in Yellow Pine, which I think is a whole different book. Just the leaving New York during the pandemic, ending up in Idaho, making things work a bit in McCall, and then finding Yellow Pine. Might be a whole book in and of itself. And I've found that instantly much easier to write. So I don't know. I wish I had some sort of timeline on when my writing would be complete. But I don't. And I don't know when I will, but I'm just going to keep hammering away at it. And I'll get there eventually. Kind of feel like cutting this podcast short right now because I still have to pack up some things, and I'm a little anxious about getting out of here. But maybe I can find a way to fill up 27 more minutes and make this thing an hour. And yes, I made a note of the one thing I made a note about this to talk about this week was my good friend Aaron Lazar, who I've become much better friends with during this pandemic. We were chatting the other day and talking about the new Jackass film and Johnny Knoxville and about how hard it must be for Johnny Knoxville to exist on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, can that guy go out to a bar without people wanting to hit him in the nuts and stuff? And I'm sure that was probably even more difficult in the heyday of Jackass in the early 2000s and the whole first decade of this century. It's probably less people probably want to hit him in the nuts now than did then, if only because they're older. But just imagine the assembly of bros that must convene around this man every time he steps out into public. And Aaron said maybe he just goes to gay bars. And I was like, you're 100% right. And he was like, I'm serious. And I was like, I know you're serious. And it led me to think about the first time I met Johnny Knoxville, which was in Austin at South by Southwest. And we were upstairs at Camino El Casino, or it was one of those bars on 6th Street, and a bunch of the guys from the Jim Rose Circus Sideshow worked as bartenders and barbacks. And I was there with my childhood best friend, Mike McGee, a.k.a. DJ Stitch. And it was in a 3-year sober phase I had from 2003 to 2006, and we were playing pool upstairs at that bar. We were waiting to play pool, and we were just hanging out, kind of killing time to the next band we wanted to see. And when Jackass, the original Jackass TV show was on, there was a song on there called "If You're Gonna Be Dumb, You Gotta Be Tough," and it was a song by a guy named Roger Allen Wade. And I don't know if Wikipedia existed back then, but I remember looking him up and finding out that he was Johnny Knoxville's cousin, and he had written Country State of Mind, a song for Hank Williams Jr., and I was like, oh, this guy's an interesting dude. And I had like trawled YouTube to find different songs of his, and Stitch and I we weren't paying attention to the guys that were playing pool, and someone jumped a pool ball off the table, meaning they hit the ball and it jumped up in the air and came off the table, and it came rolling over to me, and I picked it up off the ground. I leaned over to pick it up, and as I raised my eyes slowly to give it to the guy who was walking towards me, I saw that he had a Roger Allen Wade t-shirt on, and what came out of my mouth before I even realized who I was talking to was, holy shit, Roger Allen Wade, I love that guy. And color me surprised when the face looking back at me was Johnny Knoxville's, and he was like, you know him? And I was like, dude, yeah, I love him. If you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough. I wish he had more music out. And Johnny Knoxville was like, that's my cousin. And he's recorded a full-length album, and it's coming out on my label, Johnny Knoxville Records. Wait here one second. And he ran off and disappeared, and he came back with like a promo copy of the CD. It was just the CD, no cover or anything. And it just had a little label, like a stick-on sticker label. And it said Roger Allen Wade, and he gave it to me, and it was his first album. I think it was called All Liquored Up, Likkered. And I was like, holy shit, you're Johnny Knoxville. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, cool, good to meet you, man. I was like, I'm a promoter in New York. Maybe I'll book a show with him. And he was like, great. And so I went home, and I listened to the CD, and I fucking loved it. And I tracked down Roger, I think, on Facebook, and I sent him a message. And maybe it must have been MySpace, right? It was 2005. But anyway, I tracked him down, and I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, would you like to come play a show in New York City? And he was like, yeah, I would love to. And I was like, cool, I can pay you $500. And I booked him in the main space at the Knitting Factory. And I pimped the fact that he was in the marketing materials and stuff. I pimped the fact that a song was from Jackass, and he was Johnny Knoxville's cousin. And I think we did like 150 tickets on that one in a space that held 400 people. So it wasn't a great turnout, but it certainly wasn't bad. But I showed up for sound check, and Knoxville and Roger Allen Wade rolled into the Knitting Factory, and they looked haggard. And I was like, guys, hey, what's up? You guys okay? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, when did you get to town? They were not okay. They were fucked up on booze and drugs and whatever, and they were both looking at me cockeyed, and it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, when did you guys get to town? They're like, 3 days ago. I was like, oh, why didn't you give me a call? Where are you staying? They're like, we were staying at a Motel 6 on Jamaica Boulevard in Queens. And I was like, what the fuck have you been doing out there? And they were like, smoking crack. And I was like, I believe it, based on how you guys look right now. And the show happened, and I had booked, my girlfriend at that time was Mary Prankster, and I booked her to open, and she did an opening set that was well received. And then Johnny Knoxville was wearing like a sailor suit and a sailor cap, and like at that point he was very much into being recognized as Johnny Knoxville. And I gave them a lot of drink tickets, and people were buying them drinks. And by the time Roger got on stage, he was in bad shape, and he wasn't remembering the words to a lot of his songs, and starting songs and stopping them. And then he invited Mary to come on stage and sing a few songs. And I remember at one point he put his arm around her, and she looked very uncomfortable. And not because he was doing it in a sleazy way, but I think just because he was so wasted. And he was like, darling, sing this next one with me. And that show happened, and I paid them, and I made a little bit of money on it. And a few years later, I reached out again. And he came and did a show, and this time I had Johnny Corndog open, and I had this guy Cobra Man close. And Corndog opened that show, and he had this like Coke bottle, this huge plastic Coke bottle suitcase with him that he carried his merch around in. And during sound check, I grabbed that suitcase when it was empty, and I started like just slapping my hands on it like it was some sort of drum. And then I don't remember if I did some, like if I sat in on percussion with Corndog that night, but I definitely did with Roger Allen Wade, and I was drinking heavily at that point, and sort of embarrassed myself that night. And then when Cobra Man was on, I was just like yelling from the audience and stuff like that. And then Cobra Man came on, and I ran up to the stage and like threw up the devil horns during one of his songs. Man, I fucking love Cobra Man. A guy whose history is sort of lost to the internet. There's a dude named James Kelleher, and he had this one-man persona named Cobra Man, where he kind of rapped, kind of sang over pre-recorded beats, and wore like spandex leggings, and he had. I remember he wore like a leopard print cape, and then lettered on the back it said Cobra Man in big letters, and then under it said, for bookings call 215, and had his phone number because he was from Philly. And then he had a couple other projects whose names elude me right now. Fuck, I wish I could think of it. But he had a song called International Smokeless Barbecue. He had Father's Day, Pass the Cocaine, Pass the Chardonnay, we gonna celebrate 'cause it's Father's Day. But when I ran up to the stage, a guy fucking thought I was, I guess because I was acting so erratically throughout the night, a guy ran up to me. He thought I was going to try to attack Cobra Man, so he ran up to me and punched me in the face and knocked me out. And then I woke up on the ground and grabbed him and ran him across the Mercury Lounge and smashed him into the brick wall. But then I smashed my face into the brick wall, too, so I got knocked out again. And then security came in and dragged him out. And then I ended up letting him back in. And then we had a couple of drinks together. And I remember my friend Christine was there that night. And the guys from the Outlaw Country Channel were there on Sirius XM because Knoxville and Roger Allen Wade have a program on that. I think it's called the Good Time Happy Family Hour. They have a really good show that they do every week, like a 2-hour show where they talk about music and play their favorite songs. And I embarrassed myself in front of them, and I remember the next day Christine was mad at me for acting like such an asshole, and then I reached out to Roger to apologize, and he told me I needed to stop drinking. And I thought that was ironic because the last time he had been there, he was so wasted, but he was sober. And then a couple of years later, I booked another show with Roger Allen Wade and Mike Farris, and I ended up sitting in on percussion with Roger Allen Wade. He had asked me, he was like, hey, I had told him I had stopped drinking again at that point, and reached out to him to do a third show, and told him, hey, I haven't been drinking. He's like, good for you. Sobriety's been the best thing for me too. And so he was like, hey, do you want to do percussion? You want to sit in on percussion for the whole show? So I did, and I ended up using a trash can. Mike Farris had suggested I use a trash can, which ended up working really well. I used an old metal trash can, and if you lay it on your lap, you put a bass drum mic inside the trash can, and you hit the bottom of the trash can on the side, and it gives a sort of bass drum rattle, and then you hit it on the top, and the handle would kind of flip up and hit again, almost giving it a bit of a snare effect. And then I had Ryan Thornton, who had played drums in Rana, a band I managed back in the early 2000s, and he rolled up a New York Times very tightly and rubber banded it shut and used 2 drumsticks on a New York Times on his lap to do his percussion. And then Mike Farris saw that and made us sit in with him, and that was like I just had so much fun that night. And then I've ended up doing that little bit with Mike Farris a couple times since then. And that was an amazing night. And Roger and I chat every now and then. Apparently he's been drinking again, just based on what I see on his Facebook. But seems like, as far as I can tell, seems to have it in control. He doesn't post any weird shit. But that's the story of how I met Mike and how I met Johnny Knoxville. And Knoxville came to that second show we did at the Mercury Lounge too, and seemed to be in very good shape and spirits. And I'm pretty sure he didn't come to that third show. And I think I would like to book another Roger Allen Wade show. And that first album he did, All Liquored Up, and it had songs like Butt Ugly Slut, All Liquored Up. All the songs, they're very tender melodies and just great songs with ridiculous lyrics. But then he put out an album called DeGuello Motel, which is just a wildly heartbreaking and poignant solo acoustic record. And then he put out an album called Too Fat to Fly, back when that was a thing where they were making fat people buy 2 seats on airplanes. And he sort of goes back and forth between relentlessly funny songs with blue lyrics, and then he alternates between that and wildly poignant material. And I love everything he puts out to death. And he put out an album. I said, last album he put out, Brainerd Cafe Blues, I think the album's called, or maybe that's just the first song. But that's such a great record too. So whatever streaming service you use, type in Roger Allen Wade. Maybe I'll try to get him on as a guest on this podcast at some point. I do have another podcast in the can for Fridays with Friends that I recorded with Steve Poltz last week, but I recorded it on a little handheld device, not my laptop, and it's on an SD card, and I don't have a way to get the audio off the SD card. So eventually I'm going to have to find someone with a laptop, hopefully this week, that I can plug the SD card into and then transfer it to a USB stick or find an adapter or whatever. But hopefully while I'm in New York, I'll record a bunch more podcasts. And then maybe in May when I'm out on my motorcycle, maybe I'll stop in some places and see some people. And I'm looking forward to getting back to the more conversational stuff. I won't stop doing regular Tuesdays, but I will also start doing more of the sort of interview chats. And speaking of interview chats, I will be making a live appearance on the Stoke the Fire live event that's happening at a club called East Berlin in New York City on Avenue A. That'll be Sunday, April 3rd. Stoke the Fire is a podcast with my old friend Matt Stocks and Jesse Leach, the singer of Killswitch Engage. I was a guest on their podcast back in late October, which I think is not available now because they switched podcast providers, but it'll be coming out back again. But I also was on I've been on a podcast once, twice, I lose track, of Matt Stocks' podcast, which is called Life in the Stocks. So if you go into your favorite podcast provider and type in Life in the Stocks and my name, you can come up with that. But so these guys are doing a whole live event, and I don't have the flyer in front of me, but I posted it to my Instagram stories. I'll keep posting it, and it lists everybody who's going to be on the podcast. There's a woman named Melissa Cross who's a vocal coach to a lot of like metal and hardcore singers. She's got an amazing story. Her episode was fucking fantastic. Not about vocal coaching really, but about her own struggles in life. The Stoke the Fire podcast mainly focuses on mental health struggles with people and how they've dealt with things. And another guest is going to be some fucking Greek or Russian Orthodox priest. Russian Orthodox? I don't know. Anytime you put Orthodox after a religion, it tends to seem like bad news to me. And I remember I used to go to a lot of Greek Orthodox services when I was a kid. My mother would drag me to them because that's how she was raised, but she switched to Catholicism to marry my dad or something. But yeah, they just wear such funky outfits, and I don't know, they would speak in Greek, and the Greek Orthodox sign of the cross, they do it like 8 times or something. I didn't get into it then, and I have really no interest in getting into it now. But they have some Russian Orthodox priest who I guess came from a hardcore background. Who Matt Stocks has told me his story is fucking phenomenal, but I'm kind of like, but is it? I'm just wary of religion in general. But apparently he's great. But the capper of the guest, the headliner of the night, will be Vinny Stigma of Agnostic Front, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in person. I saw him and we hung out in October. He's just one of my favorite people and kookiest characters from New York City, period, not just the New York hardcore scene. But Vinny Stigma will be there, and I think there's 7 or 8 guests total. Maybe it's 6, I don't know. Check out the flyer. It'll be on my Instagram again soon. So I'll be doing that. I think my appearance is around 6 o'clock, but the whole thing's going from like 4 to 10:30, and it is at a club called East Berlin, which is confusing to me because it used to be Brownies, then it turned to Hi-Fi. And Brownies and Hi-Fi were owned by Mike Studo, who I just happened to run into when I was in Moab back in September last year. But then Studo gave up because running a bar in the East Village just was too much of a grind. So we finally closed it. He moved to North Carolina. Anyway, Jesse Malin took over that bar. I called it Coney Island Baby for a while, which is a Lou Reed song, and it was also a play on another club Jesse Malin owned called Coney Island High. And then he's got a club called Berlin, which is under the bar 2A in the basement, and now he changed the name of this place to East Berlin for some reason, which I don't understand because it's 10 blocks north of the original Berlin. It's not east of the original Berlin, so I'm really not sure why it's named that. But anyway, that's where it's going to be, and I'll have some coloring books for sale at the merch booth, maybe even some T-shirts. We'll see if I have time to get out to where my T-shirts are stashed on the Liberty Bell boat. But I'll be there, drinking Coca-Cola, ginger ale, sparkling water, liquid death, who knows. I'll be drinking whatever it is they have that doesn't have alcohol in it. So you want to come out, we'll share a Coke together, we'll hang out. I'm going to figure out a way to do another live podcast when I'm in New York, too, Tuesdays with Jakey. And this morning I was thinking about where I would do that, and I think this time I'm going to do it in a park, maybe Brooklyn Bridge Park, because it's close to where I live, so I don't have to haul my gear too far. And I was like, rather than do the next Tuesdays with Jakey in a venue, why don't I just do it outside? And hopefully pick a Sunday afternoon, or, Saturday afternoon, whenever, and a day that's going to be good weather, and I'll probably only give a few days advance notice, and I'll say, hey, whoever wants to come out and do this podcast just out in the fresh spring air, that's what I'm going to do. And I hope to see some friends. I'm going to be going to see some shows. Let's see what's on my radar to see in New York. I land at 5:30 on March 28th, 1 week from yesterday. And I land at 5:30 if all goes well. I have a 7:30 a.m. flight from Boise to Seattle. And then I fly from Seattle to New York City to JFK. Anyone want to pick me up at JFK at 5:30? If you're the kind of guy with a car, let me know. Drive me to Carroll Gardens or Cobble Hill. I get my Brooklyn neighborhoods confused. And then I hope to go right from there, drop my bags off, and then go to see the Brian Jonestown Massacre at Brooklyn Steel. And then the next night, I'm going to see Sparks at Town Hall. It's a band I've never seen, and to be honest, a band I'm not really into. But I feel like I should see them. They're just a little too weird for me, but they're sort of like, they were like a prototype for Ween. They're two brothers. They're actual brothers. What are they? Russell and Edward, is it? Male brothers? And they're very genre changing, but it gets very proggy and yodely and weird. And like I said, I've never put on a Sparks record and been like, yeah, I get what they're doing and I applaud them for it, but it's not something that hits me in the feels. But anyway, I'm going to go see them at Town Hall, which is a place where I have not been to many shows over the years because they typically didn't book the types of shows I wanted to see. But as I get older, the artists I like get older, and they tend to want to play in places that have seats, hence the Town Hall. But the last show I saw in New York before the pandemic was also at Town Hall, and it was Jonathan Richman opening for Bonnie Prince Billy, and then they did some songs together towards the end, and that was a very weird night because I think that was March 9th or 10th of 2020, and the pandemic was upon us, and we knew it was upon us, but a bunch of people went to the show anyway. The show was sold out, but it was only 2/3 full, and people started leaving during the show. You could tell there was just a weird, uncomfortable vibe in the air because everyone knew that we shouldn't be at a show, but we went to one anyway. And I guess, I didn't wear a mask at that point because no one was wearing masks. I ended up getting sick a couple of days later. But based on what they say, timelines for COVID, I don't think that was where I got it. I must have gotten it before that. But yeah, I'm psyched to go back to Town Hall, and I don't know what else. I was going to try to see Doug Stanhope on April 7th, but I ended up changing my flight to go to Detroit so I can go spend some time with Adam Bauer, proprietor, chief meat smoker at Speakeasy Meats, who are a sponsor of this podcast. Go buy some meat, speakeasymeats.com. I'm going to go to his house and I'm going to film some stuff of us smoking meat together, apparently. I'm not even quite sure. And Adam was like, hey, can you come out a day early? I was like, no. Like, I land at 10:30 on the 8th. Like, just come pick me up and take me to your house, which is like 45 minutes away from Detroit in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But he was like, that's going to be too much of a time crunch. Change your flight. I'll pay for your flight change. I'll put you up in a hotel. So I went and looked. I had bought it with some JetBlue points I have from a JetBlue credit card. And it cost me, the whole flight cost me 14,000 points. Changing it cost me 1,000 points. So I was like, don't even worry about it, Adam, because you sent me so much meat. I've derived so much pleasure from putting your meat in my mouth, Adam Bauer, that you don't need to make that up to me. And then I told him, don't even fucking insult me with the offer of a hotel. If I'm going to come out to the Bauer homestead and the Speakeasy Meats headquarters and see this beautiful, massive renovation you did on your garage, a.k.a. the Speakeasy Meats smokehouse, then I want the whole fucking experience, and I want to stay at the Bauer household. So I'm going to stay with Adam Bauer, and then I'm trying to figure out where to stay in Detroit. And I want to stay somewhere within walking distance of the shows I'm going to go see at the Masonic Temple in Detroit for Jack White. And I reached out to one of my buds from the band Electric Six, and I was like, where would I want to stay? Like, and he's a guy who appreciates shitty motels. And he was like, bro, I love you. You don't want to stay in any of the shitty motels in downtown Detroit. Where you want to stay is this place. And he sent me a link, told me a name of this place, and I looked it up, and they were like $300 a night. And I was like, I probably would like to stay there, but I'm not going to spend that kind of money on staying at a place. So it looks like I'm going to be staying at the Viking Inn or the Viking Motel in downtown Detroit, which you go to TripAdvisor or whatever, Expedia, and look up the reviews of this place. They are not good, but I think that's where I'm going to stay because that was like $70 a night or something. But there's also a hostel. There's two hostels. There's one in Hamtramck, which is a kind of a hipster neighborhood in Detroit, and then there's another that's another half a mile further away from downtown than the Viking. The Viking is like right across the street from one of those downtown casinos they have. But I'm like, how bad could it be in downtown Detroit, right? Like, what's the worst that could happen? We'll probably, get stabbed to death, but I have a feeling that much like when I was going on a lot of walks at the beginning of the pandemic, I was going out for a lot of like late night walks just around the city just to get some exercise and fresh air, but also just really take in how spooky the city was in those early weeks and couple of months of the pandemic. And I noticed that like when I first started going out walking, I was crossing the street to avoid people, and I went out every night with a knife in my pocket, and then I realized that like people were crossing the street to avoid me, and I'm hoping I have that same luck no matter what shitty place I stay in downtown Detroit. Like the hostel idea, I'm totally not opposed to, and I've stayed in tons of hostels, and I love them, both in America and abroad. But I'm not sure I want to stay in a bunk bed situation with, other people, especially now with this BA2 variant coming. But I'll see. It's something I'll end up doing last minute. Alternately, if there's anyone in Detroit listening to this podcast who wants to put me up, and you live in downtown Detroit, because I don't want to be Ubering around, let me know. Or if you have a suggestion, let me know. Or if you're going to the Jack White shows and you want to give me a lift to the shows, let me know. But yeah, what else? What other shows am I seeing? I think I'm going to see the Circle Jerks with my dude Paul Hanley. And my friend Christine and I are going to go see some comedy thing at the Soho Playhouse, which I've never been to. But I got tickets for that the other day, and I don't know what else. What shows should I see? Let me know. Reach out. Tell me what you think I should do at Jake Roxoff on social media, or text me 917-443-7615. If you want to Venmo me $174 so I can see Jack White and pay for that rental car, you can do that at Jake-Sufnerowski, PayPal, jake@roxoff.com. If you like this podcast and you want to support what we're doing, send us some money. But more importantly, send us some encouragement. Send me a message telling me how much you like or don't like the podcast. Don't send me a message saying how much you don't like it, because I'm just going to be like, well, then stop listening. Nobody's forcing you to tune into this, right? It was nice to see. I look at my numbers on the podcast, and they were only down slightly after taking 6 weeks off. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me and continuing to tune in as I unravel the tangled wires of a brain that live inside my head. honestly, oftentimes I find this podcast more helpful than my actual therapy session. So I appreciate you guys listening. And I am inspired by knowing that you're listening, but I'll probably keep doing it anyway, even if people stop listening. But it definitely does feel nicer to have people listening, so don't take that the wrong way. I do appreciate it. I like to know that there's people out there that aren't just listening, but that I hope when I'm untangling the wires of my brain, I hope it helps you untangle some of yours. And hey, mutual aid, because that's something that we need to get used to because nobody else is looking out for us, right? We got to look out for each other. So with that note, send a message to somebody you haven't talked to in a while who you love. Tell them you love them. I do that on a regular basis. If I haven't done it to you lately, I'm sorry. Maybe I just don't love you. Or maybe I don't even know you. So send me a message letting me know you exist and you listen to this podcast, and maybe we'll start chatting. Anyway, I guess that's it. I'm actually feeling a lot better and a lot less tense. And I'm going to pack up the rest of my belongings here and get on the bus to Boise, Idaho, which is always an interesting cast of characters because who the fuck takes buses through Idaho? This bus route they run daily from Boise to Spokane and Spokane to Boise. And what I learned recently is Grangeville is kind of the midpoint of those two places. And the bus driver from Boise drives to Grangeville, and the bus driver from Spokane drives to Grangeville, and then they get out of the buses and they trade buses. So the guy in Boise starts in Boise, goes to Grangeville, takes the other bus back. Found that kind of interesting. So these bus drivers get to sleep in their own homes. I buy my ticket through the Greyhound website, but it says it's operated by Northwest Trailways, but it's all kind of Greyhound, right? Like, remember when Bolt Bus and Megabus became things and they were like the hip bus companies? And like I would get on those and it was pretty funny because I would take those sometimes to Boston or down to Philly. And there'd be like a smattering of hipsters and then just the regular people you would see on a Greyhound, which is the people who make me feel much more at home. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll tune in next week where I'll be recording. I don't know. Will I be recording from New York City? Probably. Unless I record. I guess, yeah, I have the whole day ahead of me. That Tuesday that I land on Monday the 28th. So Tuesday the 29th, I'll record this podcast. Probably from Brooklyn, New York, where, oddly enough, in all my years living in New York City, I never lived in Brooklyn. I always lived in Manhattan. I did spend, I rented an apartment I owned at one point and didn't have another place. So I spent 2 months in Fort Greene living with a girlfriend. I wouldn't call that living. I never had an apartment in Brooklyn, and honestly, that's the first time I spent time there. But I'm excited to stay in Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill. I don't even know what neighborhood it is. Cobble Hill. Why do I keep saying Carroll Gardens? Pretty sure it's Cobble Hill. But the place where I'm going to be staying is a brownstone on a very quiet tree-lined street, so it'll feel almost like being in McCall. Almost. So it's a nice transition because I don't want the garbage trucks and the crazies and the people outside the bar, that fucking place Tom and Jerry's, which I used to live above. I don't want that anymore. I don't want that crazy city calamity ringing through my ears every night. So I'm glad I'm going to have a nice quiet place to stay for as long as I stay there. Who knows how long that's going to be, but who knows how long we have here. Today could be our last day. So that's a reminder to grab life by the balls and try to live it to its fullest. And yeah, you need days off, but hey, push yourself out of your comfort zone. Do something you never thought you'd do. Do something you always wanted to, but you always said, I'll do it eventually. Because today could be the last day. You could get hit by a fucking garbage truck as you're crossing the street. I hope you don't, but you could. And in that flash, are you going to be like, fuck, I never learned to speak French? I might. Maybe I'll learn to speak French or Spanish or anything other than English and gibberish. Anyway, thanks for listening. That puts a capper on the last Tuesdays with Jakey from Idaho, for a while at least. We'll see where the universe takes me. God bless. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Inshallah.